In this video, we're going to look at how to factor a trinomial. But before that, I'm going to look at this multiplication problem. It's because all the factoring problems are reversing multiplication. So if we are familiar with multiplication process, we can understand the reversing process, which is factoring better. So when we multiply 12 times 43, usually we can set up multiplication vertically. And so first thing we do is we can multiply 3 with, so we multiply this 3 here with 2, that gives us 6. And then we multiply 3 and 1, that gives us 3. So it's kind of like a distributive property. So when we just distribute that 3 to 2 and distribute 3 to 1. Now after that, and we're going to multiply 2, but this 2 actually means 20, so we have to do 12 times 20, which gives us 2 times 2 and 40, because this, again, this 2 means 20. So 20 here, and the 0, we got to bring it down. And 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 1 is 2. And then we add them vertically, so that gives us 276. And notice we had to do 4 multiplications here, and as indicated by the arrows, the 2 red ones and the 2 blue ones. So the multiplications we did was, well, if I put them here, we have 4 multiplications. So like these two numbers, and then these two and these two. And so when we multiply expressions before, we use the distributive property. So we multiply like this, x times x, and then x times 3, and 2 times x, and 2 times 3. So we use the FOIL or the distributive property twice. But this time, okay, let me maybe go do that one more time here. So x times x, x squared, x times 3, 3x, and 2 times x, 2x, and 2 times 3, 6. And then we combine like terms, and we got 5x equals 6. X squared plus 5x plus 6. But here we're going to do something a little differently. It's pretty much the same thing. Essentially, it's the same thing. The format is different. So instead of multiplying them horizontally, we're going to multiply them vertically. So just like previously when we do 12 times 23, we could write down 12 in the first row, and then 23 in the second row, and then multiply like this, kind of still doing the distributive property, but distributing vertically. So now we're going to do the same thing. So write down x plus 2 corresponding to 12. So write down x plus 2 in the first row, and the second term, which is like the second number 23, in the second row. And when we multiply, we can also multiply them like numbers. So we multiply these two and these two to get 3x plus 6, because 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times x is 3x. And after that, we're going to multiply x and 2, which gives us 2x, and x, that gives us x squared. And I line up 3x and the end and the 2x. So after we combine these two like terms, we got x squared plus 5x plus 6. And if you look at all the multiplications we did, I mean, it's really the same as what we did here. See, we did but maybe the order is different. So we did x times x first here, but we didn't do x times x, but it's just here, the third operation multiplication we did. We also did 3 times x right here. We did 2x right here, and we did 2 times 3 to get 6, and then we combine them. So essentially, they're the same thing, but the format is different. So this format is maybe a little clearer, and especially when we try to reverse the process. So again, this is the problem we did before. But in this video, the topic is not multiplication, and it's going to be reversing it. So if we are given the answer x squared plus 5x plus 6, we need to figure out how we got this. Like what times what can give us x squared plus 5x plus 6. Of course, from the multiplication problem we did, we know the answer is x plus 2 plus times x plus 3. But most of the time when we get a factoring problem, we're not asked to do a multiplication problem first. So we wouldn't have this on the left, and we wouldn't have any of these here. So we will just be given x squared plus 5x. We wouldn't know where x plus 2 or x plus 3 come from. So the question here is, how do we reverse everything we did here? The multiplication process we did here. So we multiplied, then we got this answer. But now, how do we go back there? So we want to reverse the process. Okay, so again, since we're reversing everything, so let's make some observations in this multiplication we did here. And first of all, let's look at the first term in the answer, x squared. And where did we get x squared from? So if we know where we got it, maybe we are able to reverse it. So apparently the x squared comes from multiplying x and x, which is the first column. If we set them up vertically, it's the first column. So when we multiply x and x, we got x squared. So now, when we reverse this process, we're asking ourselves, what times what can give us x? So you will break x squared down as x times x. So again, we're trying to reverse everything, right? So when we multiply, when we multiply the x and the x, we got x squared. But now we want to go backwards. So if you are given x squared, you can break down as x times x. Okay, so that's our first step. How did I get x and x? I broke down x squared, the first term. Now, let's look at the last number 6. So we actually skip the one in the middle, because the middle one is a little complicated. It's combining these two things to get that. So we're not going to use the middle one. So we're going to take a look at the last one. So we're going to check the middle one later. So I used the first one. I got x and x. Now I'm going to look at the 6. Where did 6 come from? And 6 comes from multiplying 2 and 3, and which is exactly the second column numbers. So now we want to break down 6 as two numbers and something times something. Now, of course, we could break down as 2 times 3. If we do that, we got the correct answer already. But there is another way to break down 6. It could be 1 times 6. So what if we didn't know it's 2 and 3? We break down 6 as 1 times 6. Actually, both of them, I'm using positive here. For numbers, maybe we don't have to put plus sign, but for expressions, to join them, we do have to have a plus or minus sign. Now, let's look at how we know this is not correct, but how do we know this is not correct? So here, that's when we have to use the one in the middle to tell us why this way of this breakdown is incorrect. So what we look at is the one in the middle, 5x. Where did this come from? It comes from adding 3x and 2x. And now, how did we get 3x and 2x? And first of all, 3x is obtained from multiplying these two, 3 and x. And 2x is obtained from this 2x right here is obtained from multiplying 2 and x. And when you look at these two multiplications we did, it's like a cross multiply. It's like an x. And so how do we know whether it seems like we already got the answer. Okay, so what's the answer? It's x plus 1 times x plus 6. But this is incorrect. Why? Because when we try to get the one in the middle, we are not going to be able to get it, because when we do cross multiply, x times 6, that gives us 6x. And then when we multiply x and 1, we get a positive 1x. But when we combine 1x and the 6x, that gives us 7x. It doesn't give us the 5x in the middle. So that's how we know 1 and 6 is not correct. Although, when we check, x times x does give us x squared, and 1 times 6 does give us 6. The cross multiplies, they add up. They don't add up to the one in the middle. So when we factor trinomials, we have 3 steps to do. Step 1, we break down the first term, which is x squared. There's really not any other way to break down x squared, so we're just going to write down x and x. But there are at least 2 different ways to break down 6. I tried 1 and 6. It didn't work. So I'm going to try the other breakdown, which is 2 and 3. So if I try 2 and 3, or 3 and 2, the order doesn't matter. Now, when I do cross multiply, how do I know this breakdown is correct? I do cross multiply 3x and the other one 2x, and when I add them, I end up with the 5x, which is exactly the one we have in the middle. So that tells us this factoring is correct. Now, we do need to be careful when we copy down our answers. We need to write the answers horizontally. Although we did do cross multiplies to get the number in the middle. When we multiply them, if you remember how we started, just like when we multiplied 12 and 23. So this is the first number, and this is the second number. And so same thing here. This is our first number, x plus 2. This is our second number, x plus 3. So that's how we do factor a trinomial. So now let's look at another example. So we can look at x squared. The one on the left is the one we just did. So the one on the right, x squared plus 7x plus 6. So this time, actually, if you, so the first step, break down the first term, x squared, x times x. Second step, break down 6. You can do 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. But since we want the cross products to add up to 7, we should try 1 to 6, because when we cross multiply them, this diagonal and that diagonal, we get 6x and the 1x, they do add up to 7x. So this time, previously we had to use 2 and 3. So for this case, we got x and the x and the 2 and the 3, and because the cross products will give us 5x. But in this case, since we want to get 7x, so we have to pick 1 and the 6. So the answer is going to be, so how do we write down the answer? Make sure you write down the answer horizontally. So it's x plus 1 times x plus 6. All right. Let's look at 2 more examples here. So both of them are trinomials. So later on, when we have a combination of different types of factorings, we need to check the types first. And so since here they have no GCF, x squared, 5x, and 6, they don't have anything in common, so it cannot be GCF, and it cannot be difference of 2 squares either, because that we have more than 2 terms. Difference 2 square has something square minus something square, so only 2 terms. And a grouping would be 3 terms, and so it cannot be any of that. But when we look at this, we have 1, 2, 3 terms, so that most likely is a trinomial. So we can use the trinomial technique. And the to break down trinomial, so we first break down x squared and to get x and x, and then we break down 6. So again, we have 2 options, 1, 6 or 2, 3. And this time, we know if we have put a 1, 6, we're going to get 7x. We'll put a 2, 3, we're going to get 5x. So we already tried those. And if you didn't know, you may have to try those and figure out that those are not correct. But notice that if we have 2 and a 3 here, we do cross multiply. We have 3x and a 2x. When they add up, we get 5x, which is a positive 5x. But we need a negative 5x. So a good tip here is if you get something opposite of the number in the middle of the middle term, and you just have to reverse the signs. So you see here, I want to have minus 5, but I have positive. But if I can turn both of these to minus, then I will have minus sign, which means I can turn both of these to minus, and which works because negative 2 times negative 3 is also equal to positive 6. So I didn't do anything wrong here by changing the numbers. Negative 2 times negative 3 is still, this is a breakdown of positive 6. So I will get, I got the answer I need. So sometimes if you have minus, you may have to use 2 negatives to make a positive. So the answer is x minus 2 times x minus 3. So again, when you write down the answer, make sure you write down the answer horizontally. So this is the first, and this is the second. Now, the last example here. So first we break down x squared to get x and x. Next, we want to break down negative 24. So be careful of the minus sign in front of it. So first, we try to break down 24 because there's so many breakdowns of 24. We can do 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. And I think that's all, 4 different ways. But out of these different ways, only one of them is correct. Which one? So if we didn't know, we may start with, let's say, try this if it works. The other thing we need to pay attention to is, since the number we're breaking down is not 24, it's actually negative 24. And from the sign number rules of multiplication, we know that we have to, in order to get a negative number, you have to have one positive, one negative. So here, it doesn't matter which one you want to use as positive, the other as negative. Just randomly pick one number, make it a positive, the other make it negative. Now let's do cross multiply. So I will have negative 24x and then positive 1x. When I combine them, I got negative 23x. Well, this doesn't match negative 5. Even if we switch the sign, make this negative, this positive, so this negative, that positive, that gives us 23x. So it's not going to give us negative 5 in the middle. So that tells me the first way is incorrect. So I'm going to have to modify this here. Okay, so 1 times 24, not going to work. So this is out. Now let me try 2 times 12. And again, just randomly pick one, make positive, the other negative. So cross multiply again. 12x, negative 2x, so that gives us 10x. 10 still doesn't match negative 5, so that one is out. Now next we're going to try 3 and 8, negative 3, positive 8, and then we have one diagonal, 8x, the other diagonal, negative 3x. When we add them, we got 5x. Now notice that I have positive 5x, but what we actually need is a negative 5x. So remember the tip. If you got opposite of what the number we need, just flip the signs. So which means if you see a minus, you change it to plus. If you see a plus, you change it to minus. Because once you flip the signs, see this diagonal, you will get a positive. Since we change it from negative 3 to positive 3, it's going to change this sign to plus. And the other diagonal, we change it positive 8 to negative 8, so you're going to give you negative 8x. And that way, after both signs are flipped, you're going to be doing negative 8 plus 3, that's negative 5x. So the final answer is x plus 3 times x minus 8. So I don't have to try this one, it cannot be right. Now, sometimes you're lucky, so this is my first try, I got the answer. Sometimes you have to try all of them to get the answer. But if you do lots of practice, you may be able to see 3 and 8 in the first, at the beginning, and you just have to do a lot of practice. Otherwise, you just have to try all the different combinations until you found the correct one.